Hello, everybody. We are presenting on teen pregnancy prevention in marginalized communities. And as you'll see later in the presentation, we do focus on the Hispanic community. This presentation is by Aspen, Daphne, Sarah, and Shamim. So, to kind of get into a little bit of an introduction and background, teen pregnancy is a worldwide issue that has serious health, social, and economic implications. An estimated 21 million adolescents get pregnant each year, with 12 million of them actually giving birth. Potential causes include, but is not limited to, child marriage, lack of contraceptives and access, and lack of sexual education. Rates of adolescent pregnancy are higher in the Hispanic community than in white communities, which we will also get into a little bit later. So to talk about some of the social determinants of health in teen pregnancy is that it tends to be higher in communities with lower education and economic status. Social networks and nature of social relations play a role in teen pregnancy as well, especially if their friends are having sex and not practicing safe sex. Cultural beliefs are also part of the social networks, which we will also get into a little bit later in the presentation. Negative home life and lack of parental guidance can be a risk factor. Experiences with racism and other environmental stressors. But it is also important to note that these risk factors do not just affect women during pregnancy, but this affects their health throughout their entirety of their lives. So here is a graph on the global comparison of teen pregnancy, and it is obvious that the United States leads the other countries in rates of teen pregnancy. This can be due to those social determinant factors being higher in the United States, including comprehensive sex education, family planning programs, and after-school youth programs not being adequate in those communities. I'm going to go ahead and now pass it over to Aspen to discuss some of the ethical considerations.
Thank you, Sarah. And talking or moving on to the ethical considerations, focusing on beneficence, focusing on maximizing the benefit and minimizing the harm. When it comes to teenage pregnancy, it's important to consider who is responsible for determining what is beneficial to that minor. Parents have a legal responsibility to take care of their child, and therefore it is important to consider their role in their children's health care. Also, it's important to consider the minor's ability to assess their own beneficence. Further, the presence of parents' involvement in certain interventions can discourage teenage participation in these programs. So it's important to consider the maleficence of that bit. Moving on to justice, distributive justice. In the United States, teen birth rates vary among racial and ethnicity groups, and access to reproductive healthcare services and contraceptives vary as a result of social determinants of health, which Daphne will talk about a little bit later on. But focusing on distributive justice, it's asserting that fair, equitable, and appropriate distribution and access of healthcare resources are accessible to everyone. And in regards to respective persons, it's important to consider the autonomy of minorities and the right of parents and caregivers to make legal decisions, but Shamim will talk a little bit more about that in the prevention. And moving on next, Daphne's going to talk about the cultural and social factors of teenage pregnancy in Hispanic women.
Okay, next slide, please. The cultural factors of Hispanic teen pregnancy is the higher prevalence of teen pregnancies in Hispanic women can be attributed to various factors. Economic disparities coupled with limited access to quality healthcare and education can contribute to the rates of teen pregnancy. In many Hispanic communities, financial constraints and lack of insurance limits access to reproductive health services. Cultural taboos, religious beliefs, and the absence of comprehensive sex education at schools or within families make this issue worse. Misconceptions about contraceptives and sexual health, combined with the lack of education about sexual risks like pregnancy, further compounds the problem. Language barriers, particularly limited proficiency in English, can pose challenges in accessing information on reproductive health services and family planning. Additionally, differing attitudes and education on teen pregnancies often correlate with generational differences in immigrant households. Next slide, please. The different cultural perspectives on teen pregnancy in the United States. Oh, wait, we need to go back. Shoot. Go one more, sorry.
This one?
Yeah, I'll just start on that one. The cultural factors of Hispanic teen pregnancy is that in Hispanic communities, family ties are strong, but conversations about safe sex and contraception are taboo. Traditional gender roles and the prevalence of machismo culture shapes perceptions and behaviors around sex, making it challenging for young women to negotiate safe sex practices. Conservative attitudes create stigma around discussing these topics, compounded by cultural and language barriers that hinder access to reproductive care. Religious beliefs also heavily influence attitudes towards sex, contraception, abortion, which impact young women's decisions about reproductive health. Schools and healthcare providers often have to step in to educate teens about contraception due to these family norms. Next slide. The different cultural perspectives on teen pregnancy in the US. Teen pregnancy is often seen as a social issue with emphasis on the importance of education and individual career aspirations. This being said, the US teen birth rate has declined 61% since 1991 through 2014. And in 2019, data shows that Hispanic teens were more than 2 times higher than the rate for non-Hispanic white teens. In this photo, you can see where the most prevalent cases are, which are by the red and dark red, which happen to be in the South, towards the Midwest and going up towards the East Coast. In these areas, religion plays an important part in access to contraception for teenage women, such as Catholicism and Christianity. These religions have more traditional values, less education, and less access to reproductive care for women. Next slide. Research shows that teen parents often face challenges completing high school and pursuing higher education, leading to lower economic self-sufficiency. Their children also tend to encounter school-related issues and drop out at higher rates. At the community level, teens with mentors and strong community ties tend to be less sexually active. On the other hand, those in areas with high crime and food insecurity are more prone to early sexual activity and teenage parenthood. Disparities in accessing family planning services and education contribute to these socioeconomic factors, including teen pregnancy. Cultural attitudes towards contraception, teen pregnancy, and childbirth, along with historical mistreatment and distrust of medical professionals in certain communities, also significantly contribute to the occurrence of teen pregnancies in the US. Next slide. International cultural perspectives on teen pregnancy. The chart here shows all the different rates of teen pregnancies by the age of 18 and by 20. The similarities between Hispanic culture and Asian and Middle Eastern countries is that they tend to have more conservative views around sex. In Latin America, they have similar family values and prioritize family over everything. And then in African cultures, they have a similar view of men as Hispanic cultures, the machismo culture, as it's called. The differences are that African cultures have early marriage and pregnancy is common and is socially acceptable. And then in Latin America, there's varying attitudes on teen pregnancy and can be seen as acceptable as well. And then next section will be research, ethics, and interventions by Shameen.
Thank you, Daphne. In the next 2 slides, I quickly review the next key consideration of developing the strategies to prevent the teenage pregnancy. The key questions are in autonomy. Are this pregnant mother are capable enough to make informed decision about themselves? Regards to beneficence, the acts are with the intent and the effect of the providing benefits. Regards to non-beneficence, are this existing law and regulation sufficient to minimize the harm of these teens? And regards to justice, the factors affecting this fairness, unfairness, distribution to the benefits and burden. Next slide. Shows another key consideration of developing strategies based on the social ecological model of health, which helps us to understand how individual health affected by the interaction between the individual, interpersonal, organizational, and policies and laws and regulations. Now to the next slide is on the national strategies to prevent the teenage pregnancy. Okay, national strategies on teenage pregnancies in US. The US Department of Health and Human Services strategies are strengthen the national response to prevent out of wedlock teen pregnancies and support and encourage adolescents to remain abstinent. The 5 key principles are shown in the health impact pyramid as graphical representation. At the base of the pyramid indicating the intervention of the greatest potential impact, and on the ascending order are the intervention, the changes of the context to make individual health decision by implementing evidence-based teenage pregnancy prevention program along with the utilizing the mass media. We can also see from the down green arrow that prevention of the teen pregnancy is achievable. The next slide. The international strategies implemented by World Health Organization, which almost echoes the US national strategies, with the able to take an action now to ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health service and rights. Next slide is on US laws, regulations, and policies are placed to achieve to prevent the treating and teenage pregnancy by respecting individual rights. Some federal laws and regulations are the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, the Title V 9, 10, the new regulations of Title 10, 2021, the Clary Act, along with the Health and Human Service and Department of Social Services. The next slide. Since all of our group members are from the California and Texas, I took privilege to talk about some programs those are placed by utilizing the federal policies and regulations to successfully prevent the teenage pregnancy. Interestingly, both states having the quite similar programs in different names, but one program, GD Sexual Risk Avoidance Program, which is available in both states. Next slide. Here, by utilizing all these programs and policies, what is the target is set by the US and the WHO to reduce the teenage pregnancy. In US, the target is to reduce the teenage pregnancy 43 to 4, 31 to 4, and WHO, through the sustainable developmental goal, SDG 3, 4, and 5, particularly SDG 3.7 by 2030, 65 to 43 per 1,000 adolescents guard. Next slide highlights on recommendation strategies to improve the teenage pregnancy. Number 1, improve the access to sexual and reproductive health services, not only to the marginalized community, but all teens. And as you can see in the pictures, like school clinic partnership, online contraceptive providers, mobile health clinic, a few of them, also to improve the quality of these services. Next slide. Increase the awareness, support by involving all forms of media for effective teen pregnancy prevention. US celebrate May as National Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month to remind ourselves and the teens is that teen pregnancy prevention is not just about avoiding challenges, but empowering young individuals to pursue their goals, reminding them that a bright future is within their reach. Next slide. Some references if likes to deepen more. Next.
Oops.
Last but not the least, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I think we have some